Senator Bragg. We'll move to question time, and I'm calling Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. After 3 years of Labor, Australians are poorer. Because of Labor's failed policies, Australians have experienced the biggest drop in living standards in decades.
Senator Hume.
Real household disposable income.
Senator Hume, please resume your seat. Senator Hume has the right to be heard in silence, and that is what I expect. Senator Hume, please continue.
After 3 years of Labor—
Senator Hume, resume your seat. It is absolutely inappropriate, the moment after I call for silence, that you called out Senator Ayres. Please continue, Senator Hume.
After 3 years of Labor, Australians are poorer because of Labor's failed policies. Australians have experienced the largest drop in living standards in decades. Real household disposable income has collapsed by 8%. The average family with a mortgage is now $50,000 worse off since you came to government. Why is it that the only solution you can offer is a cruel hoax equalling 70 cents a day in a year's time that will do nothing to restore the living standards that Australians have lost?
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Hume for the question. And I stand so proudly here to back in the speech of the Treasurer last night, the work that's been done throughout the entire caucus, focused on making sure we can provide cost-of-living help to households while they need it, that we're able to deliver budget repair, 2 surpluses. Remember that, Senator Hume? Remember that. I know you'd like to gloss over it. Repair the budget and also look to the future. I know you want to ignore the fact that this budget sees the biggest nominal improvement in a budget in a first term of any government ever. $207 billion. Lower debt in the order of $177 billion. Lower debt. Well, thank you. I'll take the interjection from Senator Cash, who forecast $1 trillion of debt in their budget. We are at $940 billion, and it is lower, $177 billion lower. But importantly, we can see the choice that is on the table for Australians in this election, aren't we? Those opposite who are confused, leaking against each other and don't actually know what they stand for, voting against tax cuts to top up those important tax cuts they wanted to call an election on in July last year. Remember that? They hated those tax cuts so much they wanted to call an election on it, and then they realised that households actually liked them and welcomed them, and then they went, "Oh, right, OK, well, we'll let that one through." Now they're voting against with our top-up tax cuts this time. Cost of living relief, working hand-in-hand with tax cuts, Medicare, cheaper medicines, energy bill relief, all of that designed to help households as we deal with some of the pressures they've been under.
Senators, Senator Hume, I have not called you. Senators, it stands to reason that if I ask for silence when a question is asked, I expect silence when the question is answered. Senator Hume.
Labor promised to reduce energy bills by $275, but 3 years of Labor, the price of gas is up 34% and electricity is up 32%. Labor promised to build 30,000 affordable homes but have delivered none, and housing costs are up by 14%. Bulk billing rates have collapsed across the country, but health costs are up 10% at a time when Australians needed a back-to-basics budget to set them up for the next 5 years. What's the best you can offer them? The price of a cup of coffee a week. Is that good enough?
Minister Gallagher.
Well, we know what those opposite back-to-basics budgeting implies. It implies $350 billion worth of cuts, cuts to Medicare, cuts to education, no support for households so that they can build their 7 nuclear reactors at a cost of $600 billion around the country for 20 years' time. We know what we're doing on this side. We're accountable. It's there in the budget. Cost of living relief to households. Tax cuts for every worker to build on the tax cuts we gave last year. budget repair so we can invest in the industries and jobs of the future. We've got inflation coming down, wages going up, unemployment low, interest rates being cut, inflation is back in the band. This is all contained in this responsible budget handed down by the Albanese Labor government, and those opposite are in disarray. They don't know what they stand for other than to vote against tax.
Thank you. Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Madam President, the budget confirms that our economy will grow slower due to Labor's anaemic productivity. It confirms more than $425 billion of additional spending under this government, and it confirms $1 trillion in Labor debt. Australians know they cannot afford 3 more years of Labor. Minister, Australia needed a budget to get Australia back on track. Is this really the best you can come up with?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Well, I think Australians will increasingly becoming aware of what going backwards under you lot looks like. It means cuts to Medicare, cuts to pensions, slashing public services, cutting the NDIS, all those services that people rely on. What they need is responsible government, coherent policy,
Minister,
looking to the future.
Order! The running commentary needs to stop. You are all out of order. Minister, please continue.
There's a real contrast between what we are proposing and putting forward to the Australian people and what those opposite are. Those opposite who want to cut in order to pay for their nuclear power station sometime in the future that might provide 4% of energy into the grid, whilst we get on with delivering a renewable energy future, jobs of the future, investment in our people, cost of living help for every household that needs it, and with the budget in much better shape than what we inherited. And we know what the offer is from the other side. Cuts to everything except what you pay in tax.
The time has expired. Senator Walsh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Last night, the Treasurer handed down the fourth budget of the Albanese Labor government. The budget helps with the cost of living and builds Australia's future. How has the Albanese Labor government provided cost of living relief while delivering the biggest improvement to the bottom line in a single parliamentary term?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Senator Walsh, for the question. I appreciate it. And I also look forward to appearing before your committee as you go through the budget, through the estimates process. Our responsible budget helps Australians now and it builds Australians' future by delivering cost of living relief, a new tax cut for every taxpayer, energy bill relief for every household, cheaper medicines and backing in higher wages. We're also strengthening Medicare with more bulk billing and more urgent care clinics. We're making it easier to buy and rent a home, an expansion of our Help to Buy scheme and training more construction workers, investing in every single stage of education. I know that's something that those on this side have campaigned for in many instances, and including from Senator Walsh's point of view, for careers, including a 20% cut to student debt, putting all public schools on Australia on a path to full and fair funding and investing in early education and care. Building a stronger economy with $3 billion for green metals, competition reforms, support for small businesses and infrastructure investments. We're providing relief and investing in the future while delivering the biggest single improvement to the bottom line in one parliamentary term. I know you don't like that, but they are the facts. In combination, the measures in this budget, combined with the cost of living relief we have delivered for Australians over the life of this parliament, will make a meaningful difference to households. On this side of the parliament, we've understood that the government should respond when people are doing it tough and find ways to help households. And despite those opposite consistently voting against cost of living relief for Australians, we have taken every opportunity to help out Australian families with the pressure when they're facing it. The choice couldn't be clearer, President. A Labor government will deliver tax cuts, a Liberal government will deliver cuts to programs and services that Australians need.
Senator Walsh, first supplementary.
Thank you. Under Labor, inflation is down, incomes are strengthening, unemployment is very low, interest rates are coming down and now growth is rebounding solidly as well. How will Labor's responsible economic management benefit all Australians?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I appreciate the supplementary. The budget sees the continuation of Labor's commitment to responsible economic management. Inflation and interest rates are coming down. Incomes are strengthening and unemployment is low. We have demonstrated that you can fight inflation and keep people in work, keep people in jobs, and everyone in this chamber should appreciate that. This doesn't just happen by chance. It's a result of the hard work of Australians and careful decision-making by the Albanese Labor government. We've delivered 2 surpluses, something the previous government was never able to achieve, despite having the mugs printed. We have reduced Liberal debt, $1 trillion in Liberal debt that we inherited, $177 billion lower, avoiding $60 billion in interest costs. We've delivered savings and we've delivered an improved budget bottom line across the forward estimates.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. I'm going to wait for silence, Senator Walsh, before I call you. Senator Walsh. Second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Under Mr Dutton, the opposition has immediately rejected Labor's tax cuts, another reckless decision in a long line of blocking cost-of-living relief for Australians. How will the Albanese Labor government protect important Labor policies that are helping Australians with cost-of-living challenges?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Walsh. I thank you for the supplementary. Well, we know that in order to pay for this $600 billion nuclear fantasy, Mr Dutton will cut absolutely everything except your taxes. That's what we've learnt today. In order to pay for his $600 billion nuclear fantasy of building nuclear reactors around Australia, he will cut services, cut programs, but he will never cut your taxes. He will never cut your taxes. The Coalition have consistently in this term, and we will hold you to account for this, voted against every cost of living measure that we have brought to the parliament. And now we know, and as we saw it this morning, they will oppose tax cuts for every Australian taxpayer, not just once in a parliamentary term, but twice. That is what we are seeing from those opposite. No plan, no idea, no strategy.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has
them.
expired. Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. It's been reported by multiple media outlets this week that the government's quick fix legislation introduced yesterday to work around the Environment Minister, who's proved incapable of making a decision on the future of Tasmanian salmon farming, was the subject of multiple heated caucus meetings and political fixes inside the Labor Party, including the promise to bring back the disastrous job-destroying EPA that you promised not to. So, from approximately how long ago was the idea of using the futures of Tasmanian salmon workers and businesses as bargaining chips when it came to reinitiating Ms Plibersek's dangerous, job-destroying, nature-positive laws and EPA first discussed inside the Labor Party?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. I am going to ask for silence when Minister Wong responds. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, I have to say it takes a certain amount of front to be a member of the front bench of the Liberal Party and ask about internals today. Yes. Given all of the leaking and backgrounding against Mr Taylor that we have seen, and Mr Taylor himself refusing to rule out a tilt at the leadership after the election in his disastrous interview on Insiders, amongst the many things he did.
Mr Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Duniam.
A point of order on relevance. I wonder if the minister might answer the question I asked.
I will direct the minister to your question. Just a moment, Minister. But I'm going to ask once again for silence because actually it is very hard for me to hear the minister answering. Minister, please continue.
Yeah, I acknowledge that. It's simply the reference by a Liberal frontbencher to the issue of internals at this time just seemed to be something that really required comment, President, really required comment. But what I would say to the senator, and I note that I note that by second question we seem to be off the budget, which is interesting. But we hope to have many Dixes so we can tell the Australian people about not only what the government is doing but what the opposition is doing on the budget and their opposition to tax cuts. This legislation is before the Senate. I think you've asked some of the you've made these points, and I'm sure that these points will be made in estimates and also in the committee stage. Senator, you would know that the Prime Minister, Senator Urquhart, has made really clear the importance of jobs in Tasmania. You would know that this is something that, as a Cabinet government, we have worked through. You would also know that this is a very specific amendment to address in the flaw in the EPBC Act that the Labor Party is not going to stand by, and that workers lose their jobs because of a broken law.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Given it's now been revealed that under the cover of this federal budget, Ms Plibersek will now not make a decision on the much-needed North West Shelf gas project until after the election, and despite this project having undergone 6 years of WA thorough state assessments and approvals, when did the minister decide to start using the jobs of thousands of gas workers as a political sacrifice for Green votes in Sydney and Melbourne?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Well, first, can I make a point? And I know that they're desperate, always desperate for scare campaigns. I would make a point. I would always make this point.
Order. Minister, please continue.
Well, what I would make this point, I make 2 points. The first is my recollection when I went to WA, and this was asked of me, that this is an approval that has been before the state government for 6 years. And I know that Senator Cash and others are complaining about that, but obviously that's a matter for the state government. It's been before the federal government for a very short period of time, and I understand Ms Plibersek has indicated, in accordance with the legislation, when she will make a decision on that. I also understand that Mr Dutton's announcement puts North West Shelf at risk because he's reckless, just like Pepper Levin when Scott Morrison stuffed up the process. Now Mr Dutton is proposing to do the same thing. What a reckless thing to do, to put Western Australian jobs at risk for a political stunt.
Expired. Order. Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Given the Prime Minister has previously said that the disastrous, economy-destroying EPA was dead and buried, when did the government decide that it would break this promise to Western Australia so that it could pursue Green votes in Sydney and Melbourne?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator, what I would say to you is that we are supporters of the resources sector. We are supporters of jobs in the resources sector. We are supporters of jobs in Western Australia. And I might remind you how Western Australia has benefited from the opening up of the China market. You might want to remember that, the opening up of the China market under this government. And what I would say to those opposite is, why are you doing a Scott Morrison again? We saw how he stuffed up the process on Pepper Levin. That's what happened. And now we have Mr Dutton doing the same thing because he wants to play a stunt. Now, let's be really clear that the Western Australian branch of the Liberal Party are desperate to try and claw some seats back, because Western Australians know that the only thing that they will cut they'll cut everything but their taxes. So you're trying to find another scare campaign.
Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Environment Minister, Senator McAllister. This is the last day of the parliament for this Senate, and the Prime Minister has stitched up a deal with Mr Dutton to gut our environment laws, all in the name of a toxic, polluting salmon industry. Labor came into government promising to strengthen our environment laws. Isn't it true that once these laws pass this place tonight, environment laws in this country will be weaker than they are than they were when you took government.
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister McAllister.
Well, thanks very much, President. And this is a classic contribution, actually, from the Greens political party, because the environmental reforms that we're committed to bringing through this place were before the parliament for many months. For many months, we put a proposal on the table that would have increased the penalties available to people, that would have established an independent EPA, and yet you refused to vote for it. You refused to vote for it, and then you come in here and ask us why this outcome that you say you desire has not occurred. And I'll tell you what, it is a reflection on your overall approach to politics, because the truth is that the Greens political party absolutely depend, not on progressing reform, but actually stymieing it, right, because you would prefer to keep issues hot and unresolved and keep a continuing conflict on foot so you can make electoral progress, not environmental progress, and that is the entire story of your political party from beginning to end.
Senator Hanson-Young. First up in order. Order. Senator Hanson-Young has the right to be heard in silence. Senator Hanson-Young, first supplementary.
Now that the rotting toxic salmon industry has a carve-out from our environment laws, what toxic industry will be next? Coal? Gas? More forestry? Tell us who will get the next carve-out under your government.
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Once again, I will wait for silence. Order. Order. And Senator McAllister, you need to address your answers to me. Minister McAllister.
Well, thanks, President. This is another question which, by its tone and content, demonstrates everything about the Greens political party approach to politics and approach to public debate. Because we should be able to have a public debate about our national environment laws. We should be able to have a debate about environmental law reform. But it is very difficult when every contribution to the debate from a party that claims to care about environmental outcomes and environmental progress is underwritten by mistruths, misstatements and exaggerations, and that is exactly everything that premised the question that has been asked now.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson-Young, second supplementary.
Thank you. Australian Conservation Foundation, the Australian Marine Conservation Society, WWF, Greenpeace, the Australia Institute, they've all condemned these laws. On the eve of the election, have you sold out your environment credentials for a rotten, stinking extinction salmon? Extinction salmon.
Senator Hanson-Young, remove the prop from the chamber. Senator Hanson-Young, you're not in a debate with me. It's a prop. It's a prop. Remove it from the chamber. Senator Hanson-Young, order. Order. Senator Hanson-Young, order across the chamber. Order. 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 It is my role to attempt to keep order in this place. Senator Hanson-Young, it is a prop. Remove it immediately. Senator McAllister. Minister, please resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator Hanson-Young and Senator McKenzie, if you want to have a chat, take it outside the chamber. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. Well, my view is that Australians deserve better from their public representative than stunts. They deserve better than stunts.
Order.
And the truth is, the message I'd give to people who are thinking about the environment is that the only way that environmental change has ever occurred in this country is through Labor governments.
I'm sorry. Please resume your seat. Senator Hanson-Young, I ensured that you were heard in silence. It's taken me quite a long time to get control of the chamber, and the minister will equally be given that same respect, and she will be heard in silence. Minister McAllister. Minister, please resume your seat. Seriously, Senator McKim, that is very disrespectful towards me and the order that I am trying very hard to maintain in this chamber. Minister McAllister. Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Last night, the Albanese Labor government delivered a responsible budget that further helps with the cost of living while building Australia's future. What are the measures that provide much-needed relief to Australians and build on what Labor has already delivered?
Minister Wong.
Well, we know at least the Australian Labor Party is focused on cost of living issues for Australians, unlike the opposition and the Australian Greens. Well, this year's budget, Labor's fourth responsible budget, we are building Australia's future, and we will deliver further tax cuts to every Australian taxpayer. Combined with Labor's first round of tax cuts, the average tax cut is around $43 a week, or more than $2,200 next year, around $50 a week, more than $2,500 in the year after. And on top of that, we're providing another $150 in energy bill relief. We're strengthening Medicare and investing in bulk billing so more Australians can see a doctor. You don't like that, do you, Senator Hume? We're putting more funding into public schools. We'll make more cuts to HECS debt to help Australian students, and we're building more houses and helping more Australians into a home of their own. Now, we know Mr Dutton and the Coalition are recklessly opposing Labor's cost of living relief. Again, they have previously opposed it and they are continuing to oppose it. And it was quite remarkable earlier today to see what happened in the House of Representatives. Now, everyone will remember the opposition tried to stand in the way last time Labor wanted to make sure all Australians got a tax cut. All Australians got a tax cut. Well, they're at it again, President. They're at it again, telling hard-working Australians they don't deserve a tax cut. Those opposite voted against tax cuts this morning, and I anticipate they'll do so again tonight. Why? And why have they done that? Because we know they have $600 billion to fund their risky nuclear scheme, so they can't support tax cuts. Now, the reality is Australians know the only way to pay for Mr Dutton's reckless nuclear scheme is deep cuts to essential services like Medicare.
Thank you, Minister.
Mr Dutton, the Liberals cut everything but your taxes.
Senator O'Neill, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. And it's clear that Labor is strengthening Medicare. Labor is investing in housing and education and advancing reforms to make our economy stronger, as well as building a future made in Australia. But, Minister, what risks exist to Labor's work to build Australia's future?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. And as you know, under Labor, inflation is down, interest rates are coming down, unemployment is low, growth has rebounded and real wages and living standards are growing again. The only people who are unhappy about that is Mr Taylor and Senator Hume and Mr Dutton. And it's all helped by our responsible cost of living measures that support Australians who are under pressure. And of course, the biggest risk to all of this progress are Mr Dutton, Mr Taylor and the Liberal Party. Mr Dutton has said past performance is the best indicator of future practice. Past performance is the best indicator of future practice. Well, we know, Australians know about his past performance. Australians know cuts to health, a GP tax, more expensive medicines and cuts to education. And we'll know they'll sack public servants. And we know that Senator Hume had made clear you don't care about the veterans in the backlog. You don't, do you?
Thank you, Minister.
You've made that clear, Senator Hume.
Has expired. Order. Senator McGrath, you have had an awful lot to say this question time. It's not appropriate. I invite you to make your contribution at taking note. Senator O'Neill, second supplementary.
Thank you. The Liberals and Nationals have already said they won't support tax cuts for every Australian. Mr Dutton stated, and I quote, "We've said that we won't support tax cuts," and Senator Hume has claimed that now is not the time to give Australians a tax cut.
Senator Hume,
why
order.
does Labor believe every Australian deserves a tax cut, and how will they be worse off if their hard-earned tax cut is taken away?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister. I've got the minister on her feet. Senator Hume, you've had a lot to say too. I invite you to make your contribution at taking note. Order. Order across the chamber. Senator O'Neill, you've asked the question. Minister.
Well, Senator President, we know Australians have been under pressure from cost of living, which is why we are delivering responsible cost of living relief, despite the opposition of Mr Dutton and the Liberal Party and National parties, like Labor's tax cuts. You see, the Liberals won't tell Australians what essential services they'll cut, but they have made it crystal clear they're not going to cut Australian taxes. It's incredible how quickly Mr Taylor was to jump out of the gates to say no. I mean, in one of his recent disastrous interviews, the Shadow Treasurer managed to say no to supporting everything, including his own leader. I would have thought it would have been easy for him to rule out he was gunning for the leadership. He can say no to tax cuts for hard-working Australians, but can't say no to a promotion. He can't say no to a promotion. And now the Liberals are telling the media the message is leave him alone, leave poor Mr Taylor alone.
Senator
Maybe
McGrath.
he needs space for a clear run. Well, Australians can't risk a Liberal government, whether it's led by Mr Dutton or Mr Taylor, they'll cut everything but your taxes.
Time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. I note the government's prompt attention and response to deal with the impacts of Cyclone Alfred in Queensland and New South Wales. Right now, several communities in central Queensland have been cut off by floodwaters as a 1,600-kilometre monsoon trough dumps rain across Queensland and the Northern Territory. Will the Minister please explain what assistance is being provided by the Australian Government to flood-affected communities in Queensland?
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator, obviously that would generally be an issue that falls within Senator McAllister's portfolio, so I'll try and provide what information I can. I understand that currently there is, as you said, severe weather and flooding.
Order.
I'm just wondering if maybe I could answer Senator Hanson's question. Thank you. Thank you.
Stop the chatting across the chamber. Please continue.
I understand there is widespread severe weather and flooding ongoing.
Order.
It's about floods in Queensland.
It's floods in Queensland, Senator McGrath. I would have thought you'd be interested in this, right? I would have thought.
Order. 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 Order across the chamber. Senator Green. I'm sorry, Senator Hanson. You have your right to have your question answered.
And I want to hear what the Minister has to say. I've lost about 15 seconds of her response, so I'd like to hear the time I get a decent response.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Please continue, Minister.
I understand that there is, as you said, widespread flooding across south-west Queensland. A severe thunderstorm warning is current for parts of Queensland. I won't go through all of the information about that. As you probably know, Senator, there is a distinction between national emergency events and those which are dealt with by state governments. I'm sure Senator McAllister, much more eloquently than I could explain, when one moves from a state-based event to a state response to a national response. To date, there is not a national and emergency event which has been triggered. And that response has not been triggered, but of course the government would stand ready in circumstances where those arrangements would need to be triggered Obviously, we know what occurred in relation to the ex-tropical cyclone in both Queensland, in southern Queensland, southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales was very difficult for the community, and you would have seen the government made it a very important priority, not only to deliver services and support, but also to ensure Senator McAllister and Senator Sheldon and the Prime Minister were available to assist the Premier, Crisafulli and others.
Thank you, Minister. Before I call Senator Hanson, I expect Senator Hanson to be able to ask her first and second supplementary in silence and to be given the courtesy and respect to hear the answer in silence. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, these floods, which came with little or no warning, have had a serious impact on livestock farmers in affected areas. These farmers were dealing with drought only a week ago. What specific assistance is the government providing to livestock farmers in these areas so that the economic impact of these floods will not linger in their communities?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Senator Hanson, as I understand it, Queensland is leading the recovery response, and if Queensland seeks federal assistance, national assistance, then obviously they would engage with us. I'm also advised that NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency, has been in contact with state counterparts. We obviously continue to monitor the situation. As yet, that assistance has not been sought, and were it to be sought, I'm sure you would see an appropriate response from the government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
The Mayor of Quilpie has said there is currently no weather radar service between Alice Springs and Charleville, effectively leaving local communities blind about potentially devastating floods and hampering planning and response efforts. Will the Minister please explain why this region lacks critical weather forecasting service and when the government will address this oversight?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. I would assume that forecasting would be a matter for the Bureau of Meteorology. I'll stand corrected if that's not correct. I don't have any information on that, but I'm happy to take that on notice and provide some information.
Thank you, Senator Cash.
Thank you, and my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Prior to the election, Prime Minister Albanese said, "I'll say this very clearly: families will be better off under a Labor government." Minister, this is the reality for Australian families under the Albanese Labor government. Food is up 13.3%, housing is up 14.5%, rents are up 18%, electricity without government rebates is up 32.3%, and gas is up 34.2%. That is the reality that Australian families are living. Does the Prime Minister seriously believe that his cruel hoax of a 70 cents a day tax cut in 15 months' time will do anything to help Australian families with the skyrocketing cost of living crisis that the Albanese government alone has created?
Order. 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 I'm going to wait for silence before I call the Minister. When you finish, Senator Ayres. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, it's passing strange, isn't it, to be asked about cost of living by somebody who's opposing more cost of living relief, and by a party that has stood in the way of cost of living relief for working Australians time and time again. The party that voted against energy bill relief, the party that stood in the way of tax relief, the party that wanted more expensive medicines, the party that has consistently voted against, argued against cost of relief for working Australians, is now wanting to talk about cost of living relief when they're standing in the way of yet another round of cost of living relief. I mean, really, you could not script this stuff, could you? You could not script this stuff. I mean, the reality is, Senator Cash, you and the coalition have stood against cost of living relief, tax relief, that has been put forward by this government time and time again, and now you are again telling Australians they don't deserve a tax cut. They don't deserve a tax cut, but you want to cut everything You want to cut everything but Australians' taxes. Now, I would remind those opposite that the inflation rate is almost a third of what it was at the election. I would remind those opposite that real wages are growing again. I know that Senator Cash is one of those who believes that lower wages is better for the economy. We do not share that view. We do not share that view. We think people should earn more and keep more of what they earn. We've seen the lowest average unemployment rate for any government in 50 years, and we've seen over 1.1 million jobs created. Now, Senator Cash, this is our economic record. Yours is opposition to all cost of living relief, including opposition to tax cuts. But what we do know is you have to fund billions of dollars of cuts, $600 billion at least, to fund a risky nuclear scheme.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering
you cut everything but the
Senator McKenzie and Senator McGrath, I don't know what else I can say to you to get you to stop interjecting. The running monologues is incredibly disrespectful. Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Minister, a constituent recently said the Albanese Labor government keeps telling Australians just how good they've got it, and yet every time I go into the shops, a block of cheese still costs me $11. That's my reality, she said at the checkout. How will 70 cents a day in 15 months' time help families that are paying thousands of dollars more at the checkout because of the Albanese government's cost of living crisis?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Senator, what I would say to your constituent is we absolutely understand that people are facing cost of living pressures, and that is why we have been seeking to provide cost of living relief as we are able to. And it is disappointing that the alternative government is refusing to support it. So I would invite you, Senator Cash, to tell that constituent that you stood in the way of the first round of tax cuts. I would invite you, Senator Cash, to tell that constituent you stood in the way not once but twice, and now will be a third time, of energy bill relief for her and her family. I would invite you to tell that constituent that you believe she should pay more for medicines, I would invite you to tell her that you don't think she should have additional tax cuts that the government has put forward. Now, the reality is, Senator Cash, some of us are trying to do something about cost of living pressures. Others are not.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired.
Is a coalition.
Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you. Can the Prime Minister confirm his government owns one of the biggest crashes in the government finances in history, from a surplus last year to a $43 billion deficit next year and a record debt of more than $1 trillion next year? Given this sea of deficits in the future and an intensifying cost of living crisis, how can Australians possibly afford another 3 years of Labor?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Order. Minister Wong.
The answer is no. Debt is $177 billion lower in 24-25 than under you. Full stop.
Order. 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 Senator Ruston, we have moved on, and I am waiting to call Senator Thorpe. Senator Thorpe.
My question is for the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Minister McCarthy. Yesterday, Prime Minister Albanese publicly backed Victoria's harsher bail laws, saying he strongly supports them. Do you agree with your Prime Minister that jailing more people on remand, including children as young as 10, is a good thing? It's a yes or no question.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Thorpe, for the question. Our government has worked incredibly hard, President, to ensure the justice reinvestment package across the country, in 27 sites indeed, to try to reduce the high rates of incarceration in this country. And I know that the Prime Minister is incredibly supportive in making sure we do that.
Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
You have said your government wants remand numbers reduced. The Prime Minister openly contradicted you. So what is Labor's position? More or fewer kids locked up on bail?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. I have answered this question to Senator Thorpe before. I have spoken with Indigenous Affairs ministers across the country and Joint Council with the Coalition of Peaks. We do want to see the reduction in remand across the country, and we are certainly working towards that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
So what concrete action, not just your letters and your meetings and your phone calls with your mates, will your government take on bail?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister McCarthy.
President, and thank you, Senator Thorpe, for your letters. They are very interesting, and I will certainly be getting back to you with your letters. But the letters that I have written across the country are certainly making an impact, President, and I do thank those jurisdictions for working with me. We do have a way to go, and I will continue to do that going forward.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator McCarthy. The Albanese Labor government's budget handed down last night includes the largest ever investment in Medicare, including investments in bulk billing, urgent care clinics and cheaper medicines. How will this budget help all Australians with the cost of health care?
Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Urquhart. Well, when we came to government in 2022, it had never been harder or more expensive, President, to find a doctor. Bulk billing was in free fall after a decade of cuts and neglect to Medicare, and that's why strengthening Medicare was a key focus of our election platform. In just 3 years, we have delivered more doctors, more bulk billing, cheaper medicines and opened 87 Medicare urgent care clinics. And one in the Northern Territory, or one in Darwin. There's actually 9 in the Northern Territory. And at this election, Australia faces a choice: a stronger Medicare with more bulk billing for all Australians under Labor, or more cuts to Medicare under Peter Dutton's Liberals. A re-elected Albanese Labor government will make the single largest investment in Medicare since its creation over 40 years ago. We're investing $7.9 billion so all Australians can see a GP for free. Australian patients and families will save hundreds of dollars a year in out-of-pocket costs. And for the first time, President, Labor will expand bulk billing incentives to all Australians and create an additional new incentive payment for practices that bulk bill every patient. Seeing a GP regularly helps to catch health issues early before they worsen and escalate to needing more intensive and more costly care. And that's why we're investing $662.6 million in a workforce package to deliver more doctors and nurses than ever before. By 2028, we will fund 2,000 new GP trainees every year.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Urquhart, first supplementary.
Minister, how is the Albanese Labor government expanding urgent care clinics, and have there been any barriers to the rollout of urgent care clinics?
Thank you, Senator Urquhart. Minister.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Urquhart. We promised 50 Medicare urgent care clinics at the election, and we've delivered 87 around Australia. 87. Over 1 million patients have walked through the door of a Medicare UCCs and received the free urgent care they need instead of waiting hours in a busy hospital emergency department. A re-elected Albanese government will build on its historic investment in Medicare, President, to expand the availability of free urgent care with $644 million commitment to open another 50 Medicare urgent care clinics, with more clinics in every state and territory, including the Northern Territory.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Urquhart, second supplementary.
Labor's historic investment in bulk billing, urgent care clinics and cheaper medicines will no doubt have a positive impact for all Australians. The Leader of the Opposition has said that past performance is the best indicator of future practice. His own past performance includes significant cuts to Australia's health system, and he's committed to more cuts. What would it mean to the Australian people if Labor's historic investments in healthcare are not delivered?
Thank you, Senator Urquhart. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, the Leader of the Opposition has indeed said that past performance is the best indicator of future practice. You only have to look at Peter Dutton's record as Health Minister to understand how a Liberal government would wreck Medicare, President, and make healthcare more expensive for all Australians. Peter Dutton, who was voted Australia's worst health minister by Australia's doctors, cut $50 billion from public hospitals when he was Health Minister. Peter Dutton cut $200 million for emergency departments in
Minister
public hospitals.
McCarthy,
and
please resume your seat. Senator Fawcett. I think it was actually twice, because I think at one point she used former health minister. But, Minister, I do remind you to refer to others by their correct title. Exactly.
Thank you, President. Well, the Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton, was voted Australia's worst health minister by Australia's doctors, cut $50 billion from public hospitals. When he was Health Minister, he cut $200 million for emergency departments in public hospitals and tried to make everyone pay a fee to be seen in the ED.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Rennick.
My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Is she here? Oh, cool. Australia has a serious tax leakage problem regarding profits and labour sent offshore that are taxed at a much lower rate than profits and labour retained in this country. Australian domiciled businesses struggle to compete with foreign multinationals because of this, resulting in significant erosion of the tax base and our capital reserves. Last night's budget has revealed serious structural issues that need to be addressed urgently, with deficits forecast to occur out to 2035-36. Now that the President of the USA has introduced import tariffs, will the Australian government finally do something about our own self-imposed reverse tax tariffs to stop offshore profit shifting and help improve the budget position?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Rennick for the question and for the issues he's raised there. And I can assure Senator Rennick that front of mind at the ERC is looking at how we can ensure the integrity of our tax system, and you've seen that with some of the legislation we've brought here, particularly in relation to multinational tax reform, and we will continue to do so. I think in relation to the sort of more current issues around global trade that are playing out around the world, we've done quite a bit since the Senate last sat about defining an Australian business for the purposes of our own procurement as a government. We spend about $70 billion a year through Commonwealth programs, and one of the issues we've had is how do you define an Australian business. In the past, it's just been by an ABN. Australian businesses say to us that is not adequate to actually say you're an Australian business working here with Australian workers. So we've done that. And we've looked at ways to strengthen the procurement guidelines to ensure that particularly small businesses get a fair share. I think we'll continue to look at ways to level the playing field, particularly in the way that we purchase services and programs, as a way of making sure that Australian businesses get a fair deal. And we constantly look at ways to ensure the integrity of the tax system, particularly as it relates to the issues you raise around tax leakage and multinationals, tax avoidance.
I thank you, Minister. Senator Rennick, first supplementary.
If Australia was a business that was drowning in debt and it forecast losses for the next decade, it would be declared bankrupt and receivers appointed. Why should the Australian public take Labor seriously on economic management when it can't find solutions to stimulate an economy back into surplus over a decade, given Australia's vast resources, skilled workforce and economic potential?
It's quite a tenuous link to the first question, but I will invite the Minister to give you whatever response she sees fit. Thank you, Senator Rennick.
Thank you, President. I think the link there is the pressure that's on the budget, and if I focus on that, I would say to Senator Rennick, look at the work that we've done to repair the budget in the 3 years that we've been here. Budgets obviously are different in terms of the role that they have to play in the economy. So when there is a need for government to lean in, as we saw during economic shocks, the budget is used as a way of leaning in, particularly when private investment withdraws. What we've seen in welcome ways is that private sector investment is returning post the inflation shock that we've just been through. And that is good. That means we can continue to repair the fiscal buffers over time. But a budget also has to provide services and supports to the community. We have to balance up the range of pressures that are on the budget, but repair it over time. That's what we've done in the last 3 years, and that's what we'd do if we are re-elected.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Rennick, second supplementary.
At the start of this term, I had a meeting with Treasurer Chalmers, as I had a meeting with former Treasurer Frydenberg in the previous term, where I outlined several loopholes in our tax and monetary policy settings that favoured foreign investors. Why has Labor done nothing to remove these loopholes, which would not only help improve the budget position but also be popular with the Australian public?
Thank you, Senator Rennick. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I know that Senator Rennick, that the Treasurer engages widely across the parliament, and he takes ideas and feedback very seriously from other members of parliament, and he takes advice from the Treasury on those suggestions. I would say the work of a Treasurer is never complete. It's never finished. There's always further work that needs to be done. Well, I know you don't like the fact, Senator Henderson, about what we've done to repair the budget, the budget that was heaving with waste and rorts and debts and interest payments on that debt when we came to government. But I would say to Senator Rennick that we do take the issue seriously. The Treasurer does engage with members of the crossbench, and where the advice is to proceed, of that advice, that we have been prepared to act.
Thank you. Senator Grogan.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. The Albanese Labor government inherited a mess in the energy market, with rising wholesale prices and retail prices that the coalition shamefully hid. Labor has been committed to providing cost-of-living relief, including putting downward pressure on energy bills. Can the Minister please tell us how is the government working to reduce cost-of-living pressures through Australians' energy bills?
Minister McAllister.
Well, thank you, Senator Grogan, and you are right. Our number one focus is making life easier for Australians by helping with cost of living. And over this term, we have prioritised acting on energy prices with 2 rounds of energy bill relief and our steps to cap gas and energy prices. And it is complemented, of course, as you know, by action in the long term to implement our plan for reliable renewables. And I'm pleased to advise the chamber that the Albanese Labor government will provide another $150 in energy bill relief, extending our energy rebate until the end of 2025. Now, this responsible cost of living measure will help every household and will help small businesses as well. And from the 1st of July 2025, every household and around 1 million small businesses will see further rebates on top of the previous rebates that have already been rolled out to Australian households and small businesses. Now, Treasury estimates that this will directly reduce headline inflation by about 0.5 percentage point in 2025 and reduce household bills by 7.5% on average nationally compared to bills without the extension. And it builds on the practical and meaningful steps that we've taken to assist households with cost of living over the term, action that the Leader of the Opposition, Mr Dutton, has stood against on every possible occasion. And under Mr Dutton and under Mr Taylor, we know that Australians will be worse off. We know because they have shown us through their actions, not just by opposing energy price relief, but also by opposing cost of living measures across the board. They are now opposing, unbelievably, Labor's tax cuts for every taxpayer, not once but twice. And it is clear that Mr Dutton will cut everything.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Grogan, first supplementary.
Thank you to the Minister. So not only has the coalition opposed the energy price relief for Australian families, but their answer is a $600 billion nuclear energy scheme that is going to cost way too much, take way too long and actually drive up energy bills, which Mr Dutton can only pay for by cutting everything that is except your tax. How will the Albanese Labor government's approach continue to deliver reliable and affordable energy to Australians?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister McAllister.
In the longer term, we know that reliable renewables are the key to getting prices down, and the Labor Party, backed by experts, are united in implementing that reliable renewables plan. We are uniting, which is so key to providing the market with certainty to invest. But after denial and division and delay for 10 years, which led to 22 failed energy policies, the coalition are still fighting amongst themselves about their signature energy policy, possibly policy 23, 24, 25, I have lost count. So we have, of course, Coalition Senator Canavan, who says this about the signature energy policy: nuclear is not going to cut it. We're not serious. We're latching onto it as a silver bullet because it fixes a political issue for us. Right. We have members of their own party setting up Liberals against nuclear, and we learn that the Liberal Party has not used nuclear in any of its 24 paid ads running on social media.
Senator Grogan, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Given the $600 billion nuclear scheme creates a range of risks to energy consumers and the Commonwealth budget, how does the Albanese Labor government's plan for reliable and affordable energy avoid these risks, and why did the government take this approach?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister McAllister.
Well, those opposite hid price rises in the Australian energy bills before the last election, and now they're trying to do it again. They're trying to hoodwink the Australian people by hiding their nuclear policy before the next election. And the biggest risk to Australians in energy policy is the nuclear scheme that is proposed by those opposite, and so many on the other side know it to be true. Not only will this lead to higher bills, but Australians will pay again and again when it comes to that $600 billion price tag, because it means just one thing. It means cuts. Cuts to Medicare, cuts to education, cuts to critical services, cuts they don't want to tell you about before an election. As Health Minister, Mr Dutton cut $50 billion from public hospitals, cut funding for Medicare, and if he gets the chance, he will do it all again.
Thank you, Senator McAllister. I've got Senator Bragg on my list. Yes, Senator Bragg.
The question is to the Minister representing the Housing Minister, Minister Gallagher. The government has delivered 4 budgets where it has announced the same housing policies which have built 0 new houses. Does the government understand the definition of insanity?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher. Yes, Senator Farrell.
I think, President, I'm the person responsible for.
Okay, well, just a moment, Senator Farrell. Senator Bragg has called Minister Gallagher, so unless the ministers want you and Senator Bragg, do you wish the no? Do you wish the question to be transferred to Minister Farrell? No. Okay. Thank you.
To address the question, and if he could repeat it to the Minister representing the Treasurer, which is not the Minister representing the Minister for Housing.
Thank you. So start again. Thank you, Senator Bragg.
My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, if you would prefer, who I believe is Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Bragg. And just ask the question again.
This is the PDF.
Order. We're not chatting across the table.
Well, he's asking me questions.
No,
I'm just trying to help.
Senator Bragg, ignore the interjections. I will manage the chamber. I've invited you to ask the question to the correct minister. Please put the question.
Okay. Thank you, President. I'm just trying to.
Senator Bragg, I don't need your help. Address the question to Minister Gallagher.
My apologies. My apologies. The government has now delivered 4 budgets in which it has announced the same housing policies which have built 0 new houses. Does the government understand the definition of insanity?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Order. Order. Minister Gallagher.
Exactly. On day one after the budget, we have questions of that calibre. I'll tell you my view of the definition of insanity is a Commonwealth government that did, when they were in power, those opposite did nothing on housing for a decade. That's what I think. Not only insanity, but a complete abrogation of responsibility. Didn't have a housing minister for most of it, and didn't do anything about supportive housing, didn't do anything about affordable housing, didn't do anything to provide the housing stock that this country needs, did absolutely nothing. And then worse, once they're in opposition, once they've been booted out because they failed to deal with a whole range of policy areas, including housing, then systematically votes against everything we are trying to do to improve the housing supply in this country every single time, and not only voted to oppose it, voted to delay it. And then, once they delayed it, then criticised the fact that it's not building enough houses. This is a sort of incoherent and irresponsible approach from those opposite, and this is a real indication of how they would behave if they were elected into government. This is what we are seeing, the kind of student union questions from Senator Bragg, as opposed to the serious engagement on an issue like housing, which is a serious issue that most people care deeply about. And we have $33 billion on the table. We are building thousands of houses right now, under construction all around the country. No thanks to you. No thanks to you, because you've opposed every single step of the way. Where we have proposed sensible policies, you have sat back and opposed it, you've criticised it, you've delayed it, you've complained about it, and then when it hasn't built the houses, you then criticise that as well.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Bragg, first supplementary.
Mr. President. Last night the Treasurer's budget speech said, and I quote, 1.2 million new houses will be built before the decade is out. Wow. End quote. Every single private economist and even the Treasury know that this target is a dead duck. Why is the government constantly misleading the Australian people?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I do not accept that for a moment. The $1.2 million target is an ambitious goal, but it's one that we are prepared to back up with policy solutions, with investments, with working with state and territory governments, with working with local governments to deliver the housing stock that this country needs. And you know what? It stands in stark opposition to any housing policy that you have, which is essentially one, as I understand it, which is to encourage young people to ransack their super in order to inflate housing prices across the country. And if you want to quote economists, have a look at what most of them say about that policy, that it's insanity. That's insanity, not only on the burden on the aged pension, but the fact that you single-handedly reduce young people's superannuation savings and inflate house prices at the same time. Only this coalition could dream up a policy solution like that after doing nothing for the 10 years that they were in power.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bragg, second supplementary.
No one believes that. The Treasurer also said last night that the Housing Australia Future Fund is, and I quote again, helping build 18,000 houses. We all know that the HAF is virtually on a duck. When will this Labor government build its first house and start correcting its miserable housing record?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Minister Gallagher.
Here we have it again. They come in here and they say they care about cost of living, and then they vote against tax cuts. They now come in here and criticise the HAF when they voted against it and voted to delay it, and now they say, how many houses have you built, after you spent a year and a half blocking the passage of that bill that set up the Housing Australia Future Fund. Round one are under negotiation now, which is actually, considering the time the Senate delayed the passage of this bill, and we never got it through with your support anyway. We had to completely bypass you because you continued to oppose it. You say you're going to abolish it, That's your policy, and now you're complaining that it hasn't built enough houses. Well, I'll tell you what: if you get into government, there will be thousands less houses than what the HAF is actually currently building right now, and you need to explain that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sterle.
My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. Cost of living pressures are a top concern of Australian workers and households. How is the Albanese Labor government's workplace relations agenda and budget helping Australian workers earn more and, Minister, keep more of what they earn?
Minister Watt.
And thank you very much, Senator Sterle. A fantastic question to finish off question time. For 3 years, the Albanese Labor government's focus has been on growing wages and addressing cost of living pressures. And last night's budget shows that real wages will continue to grow alongside more new jobs, low unemployment and low inflation. And our budget locks in a further tax cut for every Australian taxpayer. And in an extraordinary development, we've now seen Mr Dutton and the Coalition oppose those tax cuts. After months of Mr Dutton promising cuts so he can pay for $600 billion worth of nuclear reactors, we've finally found the only thing that Mr Dutton and the Coalition won't cut, and that is your taxes. So we have the supposed party of lower taxes now opposing a tax cut for every Australian taxpayer. The mental gymnastics we've seen on display from Senator Hume and Mr Taylor have really been quite something to behold. Even the Coalition's preferred broadcaster, Sky News, today asked Senator Hume, "So you're going to vote against these tax cuts but still claim to be the party of lower taxes?" Try to square that circle. Senator Hume, I wasn't able to do that. And it does explain, though, all the Coalition's leaking against their economic team, because I'd be pretty nervous about them too. But at least there are a few people on the Coalition side who are willing to be honest, like the Coalition MP who described Angus Taylor's insiders' performance as very strange. Or who can forget #1 ticket holder of the Angus Taylor fan club, Senator Hughes, saying Mr Taylor needs to show some maturity and get across the detail. No wonder Mr Taylor has a hit list of people he wants to target if he becomes the opposition leader after the election. That's right, we are now in the situation where those opposite are so busy thinking of things they can cut, they want to cut each other from being a member of their party room. The only thing that Peter Dutton won't cut is your taxes, and Australians are about to have their say.
Thank you, Minister Watt. The time has expired. I do remind you to refer to those in the other place by their correct titles. And Senator Sterle, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. I note that Mr Dutton opposed the Albanese Labor government's tax cuts for every Australian taxpayer and instead plans to cut everything except your tax. Why is it so important that workers' rights and the cost of living support don't end up on Mr Dutton's chopping block, Minister?
Senator Watt or Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Sterle. It is important that workers' rights and cost of living support doesn't end up on Mr Dutton's chopping block, because the last few years have been tough for many Australians, and that's why the Albanese Labor government has worked so hard to deliver more jobs, higher wages and low unemployment, along with lower inflation. And that's enabled us to deliver a tax cut for every Australian in our budget. And, you know, it was great to see our job creation record being recognised by the people of Australia. Just this morning we heard from Mr A. Taylor from the electorate of Hume, who told the ABC, "Let me tell you, this is a job market that's strong. It's as strong as we have ever seen and has been." Now, this Mr A. Taylor from Hume, I'm told he's a smart guy. Some people say he's a Rhodes Scholar, in fact. And that's what makes it so disappointing to see his colleagues leaking against him. In yesterday's Coalition Party Room meeting, which was leaked after a directive not to leak it, Mr Dutton said the attacks were being motivated by New South Wales intra-party feuding. Who could that be? Senator Hughes, Senator Bragg and Senator Sharp.
Senator Sterle, second supplementary.
I'm loving it. Thank you, President. Thank you. The Albanese Labor government is delivering a responsible budget that boosts Medicare as well as delivering income tax cuts. I note that Mr Dutton will cut Medicare to pay for his $600 billion nuclear reactors, but won't cut income taxes for Australian workers. What are the key barriers to higher wages and cost of living support to Australian workers? And, Minister, how will Mr Dutton's cuts hurt Australian workers?
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Watt.
Great question, Senator Sterle. Well, Mr Dutton and the Coalition have made clear that they will cut Australians' jobs and services to pay for their $600 billion worth of nuclear reactors. And for those playing at home who couldn't get an answer from the Shadow Treasurer in his very strange interview on Insiders, that's how much their nuclear reactors cost, $600 billion. And to pay for it, Mr Taylor last night announced even more public service job cuts. Another 5,000 jobs will now go, bringing it to a total of 41,000 job cuts to Medicare, to Veterans Affairs, to emergency services and many other agencies. Now, we know that the one thing Peter Dutton won't cut is taxes for hard-working Australians. Now, I remember last year when Labor made changes to the Stage 3 tax cuts, Mr Dutton opposed them and he called for an election. Well, I've got good news for Mr Dutton. We are cutting taxes and we are going to an election. And in a very short amount of time, Australians will have their chance to say whether they want a Labor government lifting wages and cutting taxes or you rabble over.
Senator Wong. Minister Wong.
It's so tempting. After the worst performance I've seen in a very long time from those opposite in a post-budget hearing, but I'd ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Senator Pocock.
Thank you, President. I seek leave to move a motion relating to the consideration of a bill as circulated.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted, Senator Pocock.
Thank you, President. That doesn't happen often. I move the motion. And I get to talk? Great, yep. Thank you. Unfortunately, we've seen this government repeatedly ignore small business. When it comes to consultation on legislation, when it comes to digitisation, to unlock productivity, when it comes to many of Bruce Bilson's sensible recommendations for small business in this country. Here we are on the last day of the parliament, and the government is prioritising all sorts of bills. One they aren't is the instant asset write-off for this year, which hasn't even passed the House yet. Yet we see earlier, when asked about it, the Treasurer blames the Senate. Blaming the Senate for a bill that hasn't passed the House yet seems like a very strange excuse from a government. I would urge the major parties, rather than trying to score political points here, let's pass these measures for Australia's 2.5 million small businesses. They need the certainty, and this parliament has not adequately looked after small businesses this parliament. We've heard rightly lots about cost of living pressures. Yet the thing we don't talk about is that small business owners face a double whammy of cost of living. In their business, they are dealing with rising costs. In many instances, are trying to work out ways not to pass that on to customers. And then at home, they're facing the same cost of living pressures that all Australians are. This instant asset write-off is something that needs to be done today. It needs to be done today to allow small business to have certainty. And I urge the coalition to support it. We may see some squirming, some pushing for a higher amount to make it permanent. I agree with both of those things. And last time this bill went through, actually moved amendments to it, and we saw the coalition abstain. I'm not too sure why, but I'd urge the parliament. Let's pass this. It's in the budget. It's something that the government has committed to, so let's get this $20,000 for this year done, and the next parliament needs to do the work of making it permanent, providing certainty and raising it to at least $30,000. I'll be moving an amendment to the TLAB, more cost of living relief bill, to make sure that the instant asset write-off is legislated for this financial year. And I urge all senators to think about the small businesses in your states and territories and support the amendment.
Senator Hume.
Thank
Thank you, Deputy President, and thank you very much, Senator Pocock, for moving this motion. The Coalition will be supporting you in your effort to move this motion. The instant asset write-off is a fundamentally important feature in our taxation system to drive productivity that has fallen to record lows under this government, productivity that is one of the great drivers of economic growth that is so desperately needed in this environment where we've now seen economic growth stagnate to around 0.8% per annum. 0.8%. I mean, that is anemic growth. Without productivity driving economic growth, our prosperity is at risk. The instant asset write-off is a fundamental tenet of our taxation system, particularly, though, for small businesses that rely on the instant asset write-off so that they can invest in the productive capacity of their own businesses and receive a full tax deduction for doing so. Now, you will recall that the instant asset write-off has been used by governments previously in order to inject that productivity into our economy, back into economic growth. During COVID, it went up to have a cap of around $100,000 from memory, and that was a really important part of the coalition government's COVID response to make sure that we kept businesses in business and kept people employed at a time when the economy was at great risk. This was a fundamentally important measure. Now, it was continued under the Labor government, but now we see in the budget last night that it's been removed entirely. The Coalition have not only been pushing to keep this measure, but we've been pushing to raise it. We want to see the cap of the threshold raised from $20,000 to $30,000 to allow those small businesses who want to grow, to invest and to employ in their own businesses, to allow them a tax deduction for investing in productive assets. I don't think that's too much to ask. Small businesses have been crying out for it, and they were devastated last night to see that it had been removed from the budget entirely. So the Coalition would not only like to see this reinstated in not just this year's budget but last year's, because let's face it, the problem is now, because the House of Representatives hasn't passed this legislation, and it's in the House of Representatives, it's not in the Senate, because the House of Representatives haven't passed this legislation, thousands of small businesses have relied on it being there at the end of this tax year. They've already made the investments, and they're expecting a tax deduction, but because this government has sat on its hands, because this government disrespects small businesses, well, those people, those small business owners are going to find themselves sorely disappointed unless Senator Pocock gets his way today. Unless Senator Pocock gets his way, the House of Representatives stops sitting on its hands and passes this incredibly important measure, brings it back here for the Senate to support too, because small businesses need this. But not only do small businesses need the instant asset write-off from this year, they need it next year as well, and it is gone. It's gone from this budget. It's gone from this budget. We want to see the instant asset write-off cap threshold lifted from $20,000 to $30,000, and most importantly, a coalition government will commit to making the instant asset write-off a permanent feature of the taxation system. Now, why is this important? Because small businesses aren't like large businesses. They don't have the capacity to just make investments at the drop of a hat. They need to plan for it. They need to budget for it. And when they do, they deserve to be rewarded for it. They deserve to be able to make a tax deduction for those investments. Let's say you're a restaurant, a hospitality business, and we know that 1 in 11 hospitality businesses failed last year, along with 29,000 other businesses that have failed under a Labor government. If you're a hospitality business and you want to invest in a new refrigeration system that's going to be more environmentally friendly and bring your electricity prices down, well, wouldn't that be fantastic? But you should be able to invest in that asset and then write it off immediately. Under a coalition government, that will always be the case. Unfortunately, under a Labor government that disrespects small businesses, that don't understand small businesses, and you know why they don't understand small businesses? Because they have never worked in one, because they have never owned one, because they have never run one. The Labor government disrespects small businesses, so they will never approve an instant asset write-off. They don't think that this is necessary. They would rather give people an election bribe of 70 cents a day in 18 months' time in order to win an election. Now, that's not a taxation policy. That's not taxation reform. That's not productivity enhancing. That's an election sweetener. That's a budget measure for the next 5 weeks. That's not for the next 5 years. That's not for the next 50 years. That's simply a bribe. It's a cruel hoax to ordinary Australians who deserve so much better. The Labor Party thinks that it can buy your vote. It can buy your vote. How dare they? How dare they? Australians are not that stupid, and certainly the small business community know that. Do you know, one of the hats that I've been wearing under this term of parliament as the chair of the Cost of Living Committee, and one of the most heartbreaking stories I have heard, was a small business owner in Western Australia. Now, Western Australia is a pretty prosperous state, don't get me wrong, but this man was 67 years old, and he was sitting in a forum that I was running, and he spoke at the very, very end of this forum, and he said, "Under this government, I have seen my business go backwards. I have been running a hairdressing salon for 45 years. Me and my wife together have been running this salon. At our peak, we employed 8 people, but we're down to 4. I saw my business manager the other day," he said, "and my business manager said to me, and I'm 67 years old, that I have $2,000 a month for my wife and I to live on for the foreseeable future, and that's it. $2,000 a month. Otherwise, my business will go under and we will die paupers." $2,000 a month. And as he told me this story, in front of about 40 people, he burst into tears. It was possibly the most moving and confronting moment that I have had throughout this term of government. Because that's the face of failed Labor tax policy. That's the face of Labor's cost of living crisis. That's the face of Labor's cost of doing business crisis. This poor man, who was facing poverty after years of doing what was right, running a business, employing other people, investing in his business, growing his business. But it's small business owners like that man that are the ones that we are standing up for here. On my side of the chamber, we stand up for small business. We know that the country can't run without small businesses. We know that communities falter without strong small businesses. We know unemployment goes down. Unemployment goes up, I should say, without small businesses. We need small businesses for economic growth. We need small businesses for our economic prosperity, for the prosperity for the nation, for the next generation. This government do not understand small business, and that is why they have not legislated for an instant asset write-off for this financial year, let alone the next financial year. For this financial year, they have sat on their hands and allowed small businesses to make investment decisions thinking they were going to get a tax deduction for them. And now they've found out because, we're at the end of the runway, we're not. Well, that's just outrageous. That is outrageous. That is a failure of a promise. That is a broken promise. So, we will support Senator Pocock's motion. The Treasury Laws Amendment Tax Incentives and Integrity Bill of 2024, which is the bill that Senator Pocock would like to see come back to the Senate, pass the House of Representatives and come back to the Senate, is for the most part a bill that is in fact anti-business. We tried to amend it. We tried to amend it because there were so many schedules to it that we did not agree with. And they embedded the instant asset write-off in this bill, hoping that they could get through a whole series of anti-business measures along with a pro-business measure. That's what this government does. It does it every single time. It tries to find a wedge so that it can get its anti-business, anti-growth, anti-productivity, anti-prosperity agenda through at the same time as those items that we want to see go through, so that we can see growth in the economy, we can inject productivity into all that it is we do. Now, I have colleagues that will go through the individual schedules that include things like luxury car taxes, that include deductions, denying deductions for ATO interest charges, which is a terrible impost on small businesses. But and it also extends the period to retain a BAS refund, a BAS refund. But Schedule 4 is the one that is most important, because this is Labor's attempt to chip away at the instant asset write-off. This limit of $20,000, which is completely inadequate, which the Coalition has said we would like to see extended to $30,000. But that's just this financial year. That's just this financial year. And small businesses have been waiting for this. They've been relying on this. But next financial year, when this terrible Labor budget kicks in, when that $42 billion of deficit kicks in, when the trillion dollars of Labor debt kicks in, when that kicks in, there'll be no instant asset write-off, because Labor don't care about small business. Labor don't care about small business because they don't understand small business. So not only do we want to see this passed, but we want to see this budget rejected. We want to see an instant asset write-off that goes up to $30,000 and is made a permanent feature of the taxation system. And why do we want to do that? Because small businesses for 3 years now have been crying out for help. They've watched their electricity bills go up by 32%. They've watched their gas bills go up by 34%. They've watched their rents go up. They've watched their wage bill go up. They've watched the superannuation bill go up. And they're caught at the pincer movement because they're also at the other end of the cost of living crisis. For so many businesses, they've seen demand for their products and services drop away as consumer demand dries up after 12 interest rate rises under Labor. 12 interest rate rises that, I might add, all 12 occurred while these guys were wearing Yes T-shirts and wandering around the country telling people to change the Constitution. That happened on their watch because they took their eye off the ball. Labor took their eye off the ball, and their misplaced priorities and poor policies have meant that Australians have suffered under Labor. If you want to know why your standard of living has gone backwards by 8%, if you want to know why you are poorer, if you want to know why you've spent an additional $50,000 on your mortgages over the last 3 years, $50,000 that you will never get back, look no further, because they're sitting across the chamber. They were out there campaigning in Yes T-shirts while interest rates went up. While electricity prices went up, they said, oh no, the best thing would be a renewables-only approach. They forgot to say $275. They haven't said that for 3 years now. They said it 97 times before the last election that they were going to bring power prices down by $275. Have they said it once since the election? No. They're pretty big on subsidies. They're pretty big on giving you your own money back to compensate for their failed policies. Doesn't matter if it's in health, doesn't matter if it's in energy. They're happy to give you your money back because their policies don't work out. The instant asset write-off is a fundamental feature of our taxation system. It has worked for years to increase productivity, to increase economic growth and to increase prosperity. Prosperity that all Australians expect and deserve from a government that understands fiscal responsibility, for a government that understands economic management. But unfortunately, that's not what we've seen this week. It's certainly not what we've seen today. What we've seen this week is a budget that's willing to squander 2 windfall surpluses and instead return a $42 billion deficit, that's willing to rack up debt to the tune of $1 trillion that your kids, that your grandkids are all going to pay for generations to come. But they've also said they're willing to buy your vote back. They're willing to buy your vote back for 70 cents a day that you won't get for another 18 months. How about them apples? Isn't that extraordinary? That they think that you are so stupid that you would fall for something as shallow, as brazen, as an election bribe of 70 cents a day. Bring back the instant asset write-off. Bring it back to this parliament, bring it back to this chamber, and let's pass it right now. But let's not just pass it at a $20,000 threshold. Let's raise it to $30,000. Let's do small business a favour, finally, because they've been crying out for help and they'll never find it from the Albanese government.
Senator Wong.
Thank you. Can I indicate the government will be supporting this or not opposing this motion from Senator Pocock? I would note the government's position remains that, as was budgeted, which is a $20,000 instant asset write-off, which has been before the parliament for some time.
Are there any other contributions to the debate as I intend to put the question? I put the question. Those of the question say aye. Against no. The ayes have it.